Hello and welcome. I'm Suma Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the headlines of this hour. US President Donald Trump signs a new 10% tariff on imports worldwide just hours after the US Supreme Court struck down his earlier sweeping duties. He says the adjustment process begins now and he will raise even more revenue. US Vice President J.D. Vance says the Supreme Court wrongly claimed the intent of Congress and did not truly give the president authority to regulate imports. He calls the ruling lawless and warns it makes it harder to protect American industries. After the US Supreme Court struck down President Donald Trump's tariffs, Canada called the levies unjustified, while the European Union began reviewing the judgment. Mexico and the United Kingdom say they will study the ruling and coordinate next steps with Washington. US President Donald Trump will visit China from March 31st to April 2nd for talks with his counterpart Xi Jinping. The trip comes after the Supreme Court struck down several of Trump's China-focused tariffs. The US military struck an alleged drug smuggling boat in the Eastern Pacific, killing 3 men in its second strike this week. US Southern Command says intelligence tracked the vessel along known trafficking routes before launching the attack. US President Donald Trump says he is considering a limited military strike on Iran to push its leaders towards a nuclear deal within 10 days. Meanwhile, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi held calls with Egypt and Russia over ongoing indirect talks with Washington. According to reports, Israeli strikes in Lebanon killed at least 10 people, including a senior Hezbollah official. The military targeted Hezbollah sites in Baalbek and a Hamas command center near Ain al-Hilweh refugee camp. UK police are contacting former and current officers who worked closely with former Prince Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor in a protection role. They say no new sexual offense allegations have been made and are reviewing the Epstein files. Now we start this hour with France and US. French President Emmanuel Macron has praised the US Supreme Court ruling on President Donald Trump's tariffs, asserting that it is important to have counterweights to power in democracies. Speaking at the annual agricultural salon in Paris, Macron emphasized the value of the rule of law and the role of the Supreme Court in maintaining democratic checks and balances. Macron has also acknowledged the potential impact of Trump's new 10% global tariffs on France's exports, but reaffirmed that France would continue to export its products despite the challenges posed by the tariff decision. Now we welcome Mr. M.K. Agarwal. He's a senior economist, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Mr. Agarwal, for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Now looking at this, although French President Emmanuel Macron has praised the U.S. Supreme Court ruling, saying that it reflects democratic values, don't you think there's a subtle critic towards President Trump? What's your take on this?
I think it is a very tedious situation for President Trump, because the way he has functioned for last almost 1 year, imposing tariffs, relaxing it, negotiating it. He used it as a tool against foreign countries, and this was a very, unconventional type of economic strategy, in the sense he wanted to generate some revenue for his sagging economy. Moreover, he wanted to exclude the countries which are not falling in line. So this way he has a very complicated type of situation. And ultimately, where did he land? He landed in lower GDP performance in the last quarter of 2025. So given that situation, he should have better focused on his raising the strength of American economy that is not in a very good shape. Indebtedness is very high, revenue generation is very weak, and that's why he is not able to meet the required expenditure in the economy, leading to shutdowns. and this time shutdown was the longest in the history of US. So he is focusing on tariff, and this shows the fissure in the US in terms of the political fissure, in terms of the democratic fissure, and in terms of you can say reduced popularity of President Trump in dealing with the foreign countries, imports, and the economy. So when the US Supreme Court strikes down his emergency power of imposing tariffs to curtail the imports from different countries, now what option he is left with? Okay, that he has choice to accuse the Supreme Court of his own country, being the president of the country. Similarly, his vice president is also accusing it. So I believe that is not the solution. You are, demeaning your own institution. You should have better focused on the strategies, how to raise the standard of the U.S. economy, how to make U.S. economy more resilient, how to make it more rewarding.
Tomorrow we're going to the beach.
So I believe that he should have focused on such issues. Therefore, I find that what President Macron of France says, that is well taken, and it is very correctly described that it is the rule of democracy that has been ruled by the US Supreme Court.
Thank you for highlighting that. And Mr. Agarwal, with markets reacting positively, including gains in the S&P 500 and Nasdaq and a stronger US dollar, how could this financial response, do you think it would influence Trump's narrative around trade policy and economic stewardship, or do you think he doesn't budge about this?
It's okay he didn't budge. I know, because he is very stubborn type of president. He wants that whatever he says, that is, ultimate. But it never happens in the reality in any national politics. And with regard to the positive response by the stock market, I believe that they take it positively, because what was happening, it was raising the inflation level in the economy. And moreover, if you are looking at the data of imports in years, it increased, it did not decline. What he wanted to reduce the imports to curtail, a shortage of funds. That did not happen. And what was ultimately happening, it was mounting pressure on dollar. And that's why countries after countries were importing more and more gold. So I believe that the stock market takes it positively, unless something major happens from the side of White House and President is imposing another tariff or another type of trade blockade. Then let's see what happens. But the situation is definitely very fluid for the US economy, and US economy must perform in a very matured manner, otherwise it may cost dearly to the US economy in the long run.
And this latest ruling, what does it reflect and redefine the limits of presidential authority?
Yeah, that's there. There is a limit to the president's authority, because it is not to impose arbitrarily the tariff. Somewhere it is 15%, somewhere 18%, 19%, 20%, or anything like that. I think this is not a proper type of diplomacy or economic relationship or the foreign relationship, nor a diplomacy also. And probably it was sensed by the Supreme Court of US, and that's why they ruled. But one thing is certain, that it is being speculated. That has not been given in the ruling, that if it is illegal, then what about the amount taken in the form of tariff by the US administration? Because of such type of tariffs, now countries may mount pressure to refund such type of tariff. So there is definitely a type of a very delicate situation to handle. And suppose they are not refunding it, this type of tariff, it may lead to, you can say, some slide down in the credibility of the US administration also.
With that, I'd like to thank Mr. Agarwal for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on to India. India and Brazil have taken a major step to strengthen ties through a new critical minerals and rare earths agreement. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Brazilian President Lula da Silva signed the deal in New Delhi. aiming to build resilient supply chains for key minerals used in electric vehicles, solar panels, smartphones, and defense equipment. Prime Minister Modi has called the pact a major step forward, highlighting Brazil as India's largest trade partner in Latin America, with bilateral trade exceeding $15 billion last year. Lula has added that the deal reflects growing investment in renewable energy and critical minerals, calling it pioneering. The leaders also finalized 9 other agreements covering digital cooperation, health, entrepreneurship, and more. Prime Minister Modi has noted that defense cooperation is expanding, while Brazilian companies, including Embraer, plan to invest in India's aircraft manufacturing sector. This partnership marks a new chapter in India-Brazil strategic and economic relations. Now we welcome back Mr. M.K. Agarwal. Thank you very much, Mr. Agarwal, for staying with us. Now, looking at this, how important is it for Brazil and India's long-term plan to reduce dependence on Beijing for all these developments that are being eyed by India and Brazil both?
That's why if you are looking at the Indian economy in the recent years, India is making big leaps towards making India a developed country by 2047. And you'll find that it has been investing hugely and in a big push manner. Heavy investments are there, modernization is there across the economy. So when it is getting ambitious to become the 3rd largest economy after being the 4th largest economy around the world, so it requires so many type of things, including oil security, or you can say energy security. For energy security, India is already diversifying its energy sources in terms of shifting from the fossil fuel to you can say solar energy type of thing, that is non-conventional sources of energy. But since the economy is getting modernized and modern day, it is required that we are shifting towards electronics, aviation, semiconductor, or you can say chips, etc. So it requires a smooth supply of critical minerals. Yesterday, India joins with US and other countries, that was a Pact Silica agreement, and today it has signed a major agreement with Brazil. And Indian Prime Minister Modi has a very good relationship with the President of Brazil, Mr. Lula. So this partnership is going to have a very long-term impact in terms of supply of critical minerals, because Brazil has a very rich source of critical minerals, and India definitely requires, as it is expanding at very high rate of 7% plus, and it will continue to move at 7% plus growth of the economy. Therefore, critical mineral supply must be diversified, and India is doing that. Again, I would underline that yesterday, if it was Pact Silica with US and other countries for flawless supply of critical minerals, maintaining the supply chains globally, then today's is also in that direction. And it is not that it is doing it with Brazil. India is also exploring the possibility of critical minerals from the Indian states also. That's why in present budget of 26-27, it is focusing on the southern states of India for supply of exploring the possibility of critical minerals. So I believe that it is a very strategic and it is fruitful engagement today, and the treaty that has been done, it is really very rewarding for both the countries.
Right. And last but not least, to keep this momentum, as you rightfully mentioned, how India is eyeing and Brazil, both of them are eyeing a place in big among the powerful countries in the world. So what would be a structural reform that would be needed for them to require them to realistically achieve this?
That's why I believe that India is diversifying a couple of years, you would have not heard that India is going to produce semiconductors or that is the chips in India. But now it has been investing hugely, and first production is expected this quarter in India. Similarly, it is expanding electronics production. In mobile manufacturing, we have come at the global level and our supply has expanded like anything. You'll find that iPhone is being produced in India and being supplied to other countries. Similarly, in other sectors, we are looking forward. AI is the next major mission. Orange economy is being promoted like anything. And manufacturing is also being promoted. And nowadays, manufacturing promotion requires that we should have a smooth supply of critical minerals. So in this direction, if we are looking, India's ambition is to become rapidly a developed country, that is by 2047, and it is not for its own growth. India has a different vision than the US and the West. It wants to support the cause of the global South because nowadays nobody is taking care of global South. So India wants that global South are also given the opportunity to grow faster. So for such regions, I believe that this type of agreement,
Yes.
yesterday's with US, today with Brazil,
Yes.
and definitely with other countries in future, this would be helpful for the smooth growth of the global economy due to initiative taken by the Indian economy under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi.
With that, I'd like to thank Mr. Agarwal for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Europe's Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that his country is definitely not losing the war against Russia, but has warned that victory will come at a high cost. In an exclusive interview, Zelensky has said Ukraine proposes maintaining current positions with a ceasefire, followed by a dialogue to assess the next steps. He has added that Russian forces are pushing for a quick peace that would allow them to reclaim Donbas without major losses, while Ukraine wants a fair and sustainable resolution. Zelensky has also stressed that holding elections during the war would be destructive and could deepen societal divisions. On military support, Zelensky has confirmed that intelligence from the US and other European partners remains at the same level, despite reductions in other forms of aid under President Donald Trump. He has acknowledged challenges with Starlink connectivity, saying Ukrainian forces are working to resolve the problem. But Russian cyber and communications attacks are more severe. Zelensky has also called for European troops to be positioned near the front line in case of a ceasefire, ensuring readiness and coordination with Ukrainian forces. Let's listen into what Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has shared.
Але не можна сказати, що ми програємо війну. Чесно, ми її точно не програємо. Взагалі, точно. Питання, чи ми переможемо, так, це питання. Але дуже дороговартісне питання. Тому і пропозиція наша, дивіться, давайте стоїмо там, де стоїмо. Там припинення вогню. Переходимо до діалогу. Ну, а там як вийде вже. Внутрішня політика наступна, що русські хочуть, ну, давайте чесно, русські хочуть просто мене поміняти. Ну, так я думаю, що якби, це справа українців, а в кінці кінців вони ж достатньо, як такі люди достатньо прямі, можуть так і говорити, можуть.
Now we welcome Dr. Gilbert Doctorow. He's a Russian affairs expert, joins us live from Brussels. Thank you very much, Dr. Doctorow, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's statement that his country is definitely not losing the war against Russia, what's your analysis in, currently?
There was one truthful statement in what you just showed of Mr. Zelensky's appearance on a video. The one truthful statement was that the Russians would like to replace him. That's completely true. The Russians are looking for regime change. But everything else that he said was being whispered into his ear by what the Russians call his curators. The leader of the Russian negotiating team, Mr. Medinsky, gave an interview yesterday, which I watched part of it, in which he said the situation is as follows. The Russian negotiating team has one person in charge of it. That means it goes back to Vladimir Putin. The Ukrainian negotiating team has 3 people to consult. Now, I think, what is he talking about? It means that Mr. Zelensky is not his own agent. Mr. Zelensky is repeating what his backers in Europe, and namely Kaja Kallas and her boss Ursula von der Leyen, and their big friend and backer Friedrich Merz, are telling him to say. They are insisting that he will get the assistance he needs, that he will be given financial and military materiel supplies from Europe, and therefore keep on the fight, and you will win. That is all delusional. And just how delusional came up in today's news. Today's news tells us that Mr. Orban has threatened to veto and therefore to cancel completely the 95 billion euro loan that was agreed in December in the European Council and is subject to complete unanimity of all 27 member states supporting it. Mr. Orban has said to Mr. Zelensky, either you renew the supplies of oil via the Druzhba pipeline, or I will veto this measure. If he vetoes the measure, then in Q2 2026, just a few months from now, Ukraine is finished, financially destroyed. Therefore, to hear him, Mr. Zelensky, speak confidently about winning the war is utter nonsense.
So if that's the case, what should be the strategy of Zelensky moving forward? What can be his plan?
Get out while he can. This will not end in a pretty way. There's a power struggle going on in and around Kiev. Mr. Zaluzhny, who was formerly the military commander-in-chief in Ukraine, and then made some statements about how the war was going badly, and suddenly became persona non grata and was exiled to England, where he was appointed the Ukrainian ambassador. He is now doing what he can to remove Zelensky and to take power himself. Meanwhile, others around Mr. Zelensky, like his head of the presidential office, Mr. Budanov, former chief of the Ukrainian military intelligence, is also probably maneuvering to remove Mr. Zelensky. So if he's a smart man, he's not stupid, he'll be looking for the first route out while he can still walk away from Ukraine and not be carried to the nearest cemetery.
Right. And, as you earlier mentioned that Russians are looking for regime change. What about Ukrainians? Ukrainians, are they also looking for regime change?
Probably not. But let's look at the facts. For the last 12 years, from 2014, when this coup d'etat took power and brought, with the American assistance, brought ultranationalists to power in Kiev. Since then, there has been a war waged on journalism, a war waged on information sources within Ukraine, and so there has been brainwashing of the whole Ukrainian nation. They have heard repeatedly what you just presented a few moments ago, their leaders telling them that victory is just around the corner, when it couldn't be farther from the truth. Therefore, the Ukrainian nation does not know the real state, a deplorable state of their armed forces. They do not know how close they are to losing the war militarily in the Donbass, meaning Russia taking all land up the Dnieper River. And so they're in no position to make a rational decision on whether they support or don't support the existing regime. My prediction is the only way that Ukraine can save itself from total national destruction, which is what the European Commission is projecting as their plan for Ukraine. The only way that they can survive this is by a capitulation in which the normal officer caste in Ukraine, which is very well educated, takes power for a transition period, during which the real state of situation would be exposed to the nation, and they could make a reasonable, informed decision what they want to do next. That is not the case today.
Yes, and last but not least, yesterday we saw the breaking news coming in that European Commission has approved the German government's continued control over Rosneft's German assets. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Look, the relations between Germany and Russia are deteriorating daily, and that Germany would attack one of the largest oil producers and distributors in Russia is in line with Mr. Merz's position of open warfare against Russia. What he doesn't do, he should tune into Russian television. I'm sure that his television set is not censored like that of his compatriots. And listen to what they're saying, because what they're saying is that Russia, at least according to the more patriotic persons who appear on these very authoritative talk shows, they're saying that Russia should no longer consider just sending an Oreshnik here or there against German arms manufacturers. They're saying that Germany should be wiped off the face of the earth with nuclear bombs. If Mr. Merz listened to that, he might sober up.
With that, I'd like to thank Dr. Gilbert Doctorow for joining us, as always, and sharing that insight with us on NewsX World. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Venezuela. Venezuelan authorities have granted amnesty to 379 political prisoners, overseeing the process after a new amnesty law that was enacted following the ouster of former leader Nicolas Maduro. Venezuela's National Assembly has unanimously adopted the law, providing hope to hundreds of political prisoners behind the bars may be released soon. National Assembly Deputy Jorge Araiza has said that a total of 379 people must be released, granted amnesty between tonight and tomorrow morning. Araiza has added that a request has been submitted by the Public Prosecutor's Office to the competent courts to grant amnesty measures. Let's listen in.
Antes de entrar en eso, te doy un tubazo.
Dígame.
Como buen periodista. Me acaban de pasar un papel donde me informan tanto el Tribunal Supremo como el Ministerio Público que se han recibido solicitudes del Ministerio Público a los tribunales competentes para otorgar medidas de amnistía, 371 en Caracas, 5 en Barinas, 2 en Portuguesa y 1 en Monagas. En total, 379. Que estas personas deben ser excarceladas, amnistiadas entre la noche de hoy y la mañana de mañana. Así va a ser la dinámica en los próximos días. Lo que me decía...
Primicia.
Sí, primicia. Tubazo, ¿no?
Now we move on to Europe. 5 people were killed in a series of avalanches in the Austrian Alps as heavy snowfall hit the region. A 42-year-old German man caught in an avalanche with his 16-year-old son was among the victims. Police said the teenager was airlifted to hospital from the slope in Noders near the Swiss-Italian border. 3 other skiers were killed in an avalanche near the popular St. Anton resort, while a snowboarder died after being buried in the neighboring Vorarlberg region. Austria has now seen at least 21 avalanche-related deaths this winter, while dozens of fatalities have been recorded across the Alps. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.